I would love to kind of start on the question of anxiety. I know to the outside world, Daryl-Ann, like people look at you and they're like, she's fearless. She's an amazing mom. She's an influencer. She's a business owner. Like you have it all quote unquote figured out, but you've been very transparent that anxiety has always been a part of your journey and your mantra is do it afraid. So I'm curious, where did that mindset come from? And does it get easier over time?
Okay, I love talking about this because it is something that is so like near to me, because even as I've grown as like an entrepreneur, as a mom, as a woman, as anything, I've dealt with anxiety in all areas. So for me, do it afraid applies to me in so many different aspects. But like as a mom, I struggled with postpartum anxiety from my first child. So like being able to just show up afraid has been such a big deal. And then, you know, like you said, owning a business, things like that, things come up every day where I'm like, not just even starting the business, but while you're running it. And so I think that learning to do things afraid as someone, as a woman who struggles with anxiety, which I feel like is so common, it's been game changing for me because it hasn't let me be paralyzed. Because I feel like so often we can allow like fear or not even being afraid, but anxiety can even just paralyze us into like, well, I don't know exactly how to do it. Or I don't know, maybe I'm not as educated as someone, or maybe I don't know enough about this subject to do it. And I've felt like I've had the most success when I just showed up and did it afraid or did it consistently without the knowledge and maybe anxiety around not knowing enough. And I just did it anyways. And so for me, that has been so big, especially in running a business. Even today, like I feel like sometimes we'll step into new things that we've never done. We're always trying to evolve. And I never know. One of my mentors told me, no one's really an adult. No one really knows it all. And it's really interesting because it's like we're all just trying to figure it out. And I think on the inside, and I even think this too, like, oh, they totally know what they're doing. I think we all do that with everyone else. One of my mentors, she's the founder of Tarte Cosmetics. And she's like, no one's an adult. Everyone's trying to figure it out. And when I look at her, I'm like, she knows exactly what she's doing. But the truth is, I think everyone is figuring it out. And in some capacity, everyone feels inadequate or uneducated or afraid. And so showing up and just doing it afraid and doing it uneducated or doing it not really sure of yourself, a little bit anxious, is what makes the difference between someone who achieves it and doesn't. And so like for me, it's shown so true in my life. And so it's like my mantra of how I do things, and I love it.
It's so beautiful and it's so true. I've interviewed like hundreds of women on this podcast in all different scales and sizes of their businesses. And it's not like they don't have that fear, like you said, they just have the courage to move through it. And, you know, it gets a little bit easier in time. But like you said, even, you know, when the business levels up or you launch a new product or something, there's always going to be that unknown. So if you're, you know, listening in and you're still at a job and you haven't launched your business, it's like, just work on that muscle in any way you can, because it will never go away. So I love that you openly talk about how it's something you've managed in your personal life and in work, and you still continue to deal with that because it's the reality. It's like none of us know what we're doing. So I love what your mentor said. It's so true.
Yeah, no one's an adult here. That's what she always says. But I think the other part is like, to your point, like I knew nothing about, and we'll get to this, I'm sure, but I knew nothing about clothing manufacturing, literally no experience. And there's some things in your life that where you do have experience and that's valuable. But I think there's still always a point where you're stepping into an unknown, always, if you want to be successful. And so I think that just knowing that like, no, not everyone else out there has it figured out and they're not afraid. They are too. It's just really who pushes through it.
Oh, so beautiful. I love that. And so, yeah, let's talk about your journey. I am so fascinated. So you studied pre-med in business, you taught high school chemistry, and you even worked in your family's construction business. Like, I love it because I feel like my background also has so many different pivots. But, you know, it's so surprising because looking at you now, you would never have thought that has been your background. So I'm curious, maybe what were some of the early lessons those jobs taught you, and how did it eventually lead you to blogging, which can maybe be the part two of that question?
I think growing up, one of my favorite things my parents instilled in me was they always said, like, give 100% wherever your feet are, you know? And so I had always thought, to go back to your point of pre-med, I had always thought I had wanted to be a doctor. I went to school for it. And then my sophomore year, when it became more of the practical and I was in it, I was like, oh shoot, I don't like this. I'm like, I don't want to do this forever. And so that was a wake-up call for me, because I was like, well, what am I going to do with my life? If this is what I thought I wanted to do since I was a kid, and now I recognize I don't want to do it. And I'm going to have to put in a lot more years to get there. Like, if this is not for me, what is for me? And so I quickly added another major, like a business major on top of it, because I didn't have the courage to let it go yet, because it was like my lifelong dream. But I also didn't think it was what I wanted to do. So I added on this like business, because I was like, I can take that anywhere. Whether if I do become a doctor, I can take it with me. If I don't, I can take it with me. So I had grown up with an entrepreneur as a dad. And I was like, I am never starting my own business. They work all the time. And so I think when you see entrepreneur, you're like, it sounds glamorous. And then you realize like, oh, working for myself means working 10 times more than working for anyone else. But it can be it is the most fulfilling in my opinion, because I think that I'm built for it. But so that's how I got into like helping my family's construction company. And after I got out of school, I was like, not sure what I was going to do, because I didn't want to be a doctor. So I kind of stepped into this accounting role, because with my business degree, I stepped into this accounting role, and I just tried to do my best and give my all and learn as much as I could and give as much as I could wherever I was. So like, I didn't know that that's what I wanted to do forever, but like I did the best dang job I could at it and like made it better. So like everywhere I went, I tried to leave it better than I found it. That's my husband and my motto is like, leave it better than you found it. So I was like, okay, well, I am going to give like 110%, even though this is not where I want to be right now. Sometimes I feel like when I talk to people, they're like, well, this isn't really what I want to do. I want to do this instead. And I'm like, you don't get to the next level, in my opinion, by trying to always get to where you are and doing not the best job at where you don't want to be. I was like, the real people that succeed, I always think, are the ones that are like undercover, just hustling and giving it their all, even though they don't really want to be there. Like those are the people that get promoted and get elevated and all of those things. And so, anyway, so I did that for a long time. And then a local high school that my sister went to had heard that I had a pre-med degree. They were like in dire need of a chemistry teacher. They're like, would you do it? And I was like, I never thought I was going to be a teacher, but I was like, you know what? I'm always like one to want to try new things, like expand my horizons. Like, let me like try it. I'll try it and I'll do a good job at it. And so I said yes, which was wild. And so I taught chemistry for a year while still working for the construction company. So it was a unique schedule. And so I just kind of hustled like wherever I could and gave it my all. And I like, they asked me to stay and teach again. And my husband and I were in an interesting spot in our lives because personally we were going through a lot. His stepdad had passed away. And so we had taken in his sister, and I wasn't ready to commit to a whole nother year with them because I had now taken in a 13-year-old as my daughter, essentially at 23 years old. And I was like, well, I can't commit to you right now. And my husband, in the midst of all of this, like me doing accounting and teaching chemistry and, stepping as a parental figure, he was like, you need something creative. And like, you could do this blogging thing that was like very big at the time. And I was like, I don't know. These girls are like, to your point, like earlier, they're super fashionable. They already know how to take photos. Like, I know nothing about taking photos. I know nothing about websites or blogs, like whatever. And he's like, well, figure it out. Just do it. And so he like pushed me to do it as a creative outlet during that crazy time of our life. And I just kept doing it. I was talking to somebody just this week, and they were like, what was like that big viral moment for you? And I was like, literally not. I am not more special than anyone else. I've just been consistent every day for 10 years. Like, so yes. I think that is the difference between success and not success. Like, if from what I've seen in like, my peers and different people, it's like, it's really just the people that have been willing to show up every day, regardless of how they feel about it, of whether it's going great that day or not great that day, or they're going viral or they're not. There was no like overnight success. It was overnight every day for 10 years,
Yeah.
And so I started as a hobby in 2015, and I continued to do accounting for 4 more years until I had my son. And so yeah, that's kind of how it started out of that. And it evolved obviously since then, but that is where it got its start.
Yeah. And I love what you said about consistency. It's so true. I mean, even for our business, before we launched our product, we were posting 4 times a day between like my
Yes.
co-founder, who's my sister-in-law. And it was tough. And she just had a baby. And imagine like you still show up on days where it's not ideal, but like, it's like your baby, and just staying that consistent over whatever life gets you is like huge. So 10 years of that is
It's so
incredible.
big. Yeah.
People drop in like
It's so
6 months or not even, it's tough.
Yeah, they're like, "Oh, I'm not growing." I'm like, I was literally talking to somebody and I was like, I have been making money at this as long as I didn't. So like, we're talking the first 5 years I didn't make money, and then the second 5 years I did, but I showed up every day for 5 years for free. I mean, at first, like it does, like I'm sure, like you were saying, it is my passion. It was a creative outlet. It was fun, but it's nothing is always
Yeah,
fun if
totally.
you're consistent. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that a lot of times people think, even myself, I feel like I could think back a while ago, I've learned since, but like if I'm not inspired anymore, or if it doesn't feel fun anymore, or if I don't like feel passionate about it anymore, there are seasons that I don't feel inspired or passionate or anything. But there are seasons that I do, and it picks back up again. And I feel like being dedicated is beyond like your feeling in that moment and being committed to it. And so I think that like overall, I love it.
Yeah.
And I would answer it that way any day, obviously. But like there are seasons that I'm like, well, it would, I have a lot going on right now. This would be, but like you said, like you show up even when it's not convenient and like not easy and maybe not what you feel like doing. And I feel like those are the people that end up being successful. It's really consistency is what I feel like is the common thread more than any other special like gift or talent, if that makes sense.
100%. And I think that it applies the same thing in business. And it's so interesting. I appreciate you sharing that. Even though you're in your passion in your world, though you will have seasons where it actually is more difficult. And I remember once, I think this was like early when I was building my business, which was the main thing. And I was doing the podcast. My husband looked at me. I think I had like a breakdown. I was like, this is too much. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. He's like, so just stop the podcast. Literally, he said that. And I was like, absolutely not. I'm like, he's like, I said that on purpose to see like your reaction. Cause like, even in those dark moments, it's just like, you want to still continue, even though it's tough, but net, you're always happy that you pushed through and, continued with what you were doing. So yeah, I think that consistency piece is so key. So I'm curious, when you were wanting this creative outlet, you and your family are going through a difficult time. I can't imagine, were you ever nervous about putting yourself out there? Like what people around you thought, family or friends who knew you, you're like in this new element. So what did that feel like? Because people get so nervous. It feels like you're naked in the early days a little bit. So I'm curious.
That is a perfect description. I love how you described it. No one's ever said it like that. And I love that. Well, I've never heard that. So we laugh because I turned my personal profile into my business. And I think people are scared to do that because of what everyone will think that's already following them, that it's almost more embarrassing to the people that you do know than it is the people you don't. And my husband, I think it was at the time, goes, well, would you rather start with 440 followers or 0? And I was like, well, I'd rather start with 440. And so I think that's exactly what it was at the time. And so I just used my personal page and had to get over it and do it anyways, do it afraid. And I went down to 200 followers.
Oh,
so
wow. That's tough.
All of these people that I do know did unfollow me. And I was like, it's true. It was like, so you're going to keep going? Like, or do you suck at this? Or like how embarrassing, which it was, like, you know what I mean? Like, and so I kept going. Like consistency is literally the only thing I think that makes, not that only makes someone special, but it really is the biggest determining factor, I feel like, in success or not. And so I was like, you know what? I am just going to keep doing it. At this point, everybody I've lost is gone now. So, I just kept doing it. Like as embarrassing as it was, as silly as it was, as much as it felt like clearly no one wanted to see it, I knew I wanted to do it. So I just kept doing it anyways. And Then it started obviously going up, but it went down before it went up.
That is, I feel like the early days, you're the most vulnerable. And I think what you said, there's something scary about people knowing you, like following you, or like, I remember for the podcast, I was like, no, you don't need to listen. Like there's definitely a lot more vulnerability. So I can't imagine losing 200 people and still like not questioning yourself, but you still did, but you pushed through that. So I'm curious, what do you think is really allowing you to be consistent? Is it, for example, like when you're on camera or you're sharing, like you feel this light, you feel like you're meant to be there? Like what are you feeling that has allowed you to push through, especially in those early days where people were unfollowing you? Like that is tough. Major props, by the way.
Okay, I think it's twofold. You're not always going to feel like you're good at it, because I didn't in the beginning, because I wasn't good at it yet. I think I became good at it because I showed up and kept doing it and kept practicing and all of that. My husband, though, he's really good at this. So like even today, like, how you said, like when people tell you they listen to the podcast, you're kind of like, I think as women, maybe our knee-jerk reaction is to be like, oh, really? Oh my gosh. Like a little like surprised that people would want to listen. And so like, we'll get to nudes, but like today it revolves around that. But like with nudes, when someone says they love it, I used to be like, oh my gosh, really? That's so awesome. Whatever. That's my automatic response. And he's like, you have to change that. It's not really, it's the best. That's why you made it. And so I think that it's true. Like having saying out loud, whether it's like what your automatic reaction has been really big for me. Cause lately he's been like, you got to flip the script on that and say like, I know, I love it too. Like, thank you so much. I love it too. I'm so proud of it. Things like that. And like, if I would have shown up like that, I wish I would have started like speaking to myself that way in the beginning and being like, no, I'm passionate about this. I love it. I am good at it. I'm going to be great at this. Like that type of talk to myself would have been really, I pushed through it, but it's really powerful rather than diminishing what I'm doing or why I'm doing it. Cause I feel like that's our automatic reaction, is to kind of downplay it. And in the beginning, I think sometimes verbalizing confidence before you feel it is really good for me. At least it's really good for me to be like, no, we are the best at this, or it is like, I am really good at this. And like telling myself, not necessarily saying it out loud, but telling myself that like, no, you're good at this. This is what you want to do. Like, you can be great at this. This is going to be great. Like all those things, rather than we tend to beat ourselves up all the time, rather than being like, oh, I suck at this or whatever. That is my automatic. And so I think that's everybody's probably automatic, is to be critical of ourselves. And so I think I've been learning lately to like try to flip the script on that. And so I think that could be really helpful, of like, hey, no, I'm going to push through this because I love it and I am good at it, or I'm going to be good at it, and all of that. And so I just kept doing it, whether people wanted to see it or not, because it was fun for me. And I needed in that time, I needed something creative. I needed something fun. And I was like, what do I care if people follow or they don't? My husband I had like, it's nice to have a voice in your ear that is like not critical of you, and is reminding you like, no, you need this. Like, this is fun for you. Who cares if they follow? And if they don't want to see it, they'll unfollow, and who cares? And having somebody like that was really helpful for me. So I think that's why I kept going. But
who is around you, whether it's your partner or your friends, in any aspect, even in business, I feel like is so important, because you're right. Like those moments that are difficult, you want someone who kind of can push you and be supportive. And it really makes such a big deal over time. So I love hearing your relationship together. And I know how close you are with family too. So I'm sure that's been a big component. And one thing I also want to talk about is, I look at you and I'm like, she's so just who she is and herself. And you've been open about how you used to be a perfectionist, and it wasn't until you had, I believe, your son. So I'm curious, can you talk about that? I guess you mentioned it's kind of like a breaking point, and how it maybe shifted your content and your work at that time as well.
Gosh, that's such a good question. Such a loaded question and pivotal point of my entire career. Like, honestly, if I look back at my career, that was the most pivotal moment of my entire career. I had my son. I became a mom. So it was my very first child in 2019. And I started blogging in 2015, and I didn't make an income enough that like my husband didn't have to work. Like this was not it was starting to make a little money, but nothing that was like substantial, if that makes sense. So at this point, I now am a mom. I am working 2 jobs essentially because I'm working this accounting job and then I have my blog that is a full-time thing, but I'm not making any money at it. And now I'm trying to be a mom. And obviously that is the most important thing to me. And so I remember being at this pivotal moment. My son was 8 months old, I want to say. And I was sobbing in the kitchen to my husband because online at the time, perfectionism was the persona. Like that was what people exhibited. It was perfectly curated and beautiful. And I had figured that out because now I'm 4 years into this. And I was like, I cannot keep up. Like I cannot be a mom, have a job and do this and have it look perfect. Like because my life is a mess. Like, you know what I mean? I was like, I'm this normal person and it looks like all perfect. And look at my outfit that I could never wear because I have milk stains all over my shirt. And I could never wear this because I'm nursing and whatever. And so my husband was like, it's kind of a pivotal moment like yours. Like, okay, well, just give it up. Like, cause I can't quit because I don't make to help you because I don't make, it doesn't make enough money for me to quit my job. And so he was kind of like, well, you just quit. Like, stop. If you can't do it, just stop. It's supposed to be fun. If it's like, it was one thing where it wasn't fun for a minute. Like it wasn't fun the entire time I had my son. And so he's like, maybe this is just like, if you don't want to do it, then we just stop. Like you can only do so much. And I, like you, that did not sit well with me. I was like, I've put so much into this that like, I was proud of it at that point. Like I didn't want to walk away and I did love it. Like at the end of the day, I didn't love it in that moment, but I did love it. And I knew that. And so I didn't want to do it. And so basically my choices were at the time, this felt very scary, but it was either, just give it up or show up as I am, who I am, like full authenticity and messy and not this perfect persona. So like totally flip how I show up or give it up. And I was like, well, either it's over for sure if I give it up. And if I show up in an authentic way and it all blows up in flames, then it's the same result. So I'll just try it. It was kind of my thought. And this was the shift before like authenticity online. Like I like to say it was like the very cusp of it. And I had to do it. Like for my life, I either had to do it or give it up. So I did it. And that is absolutely when it took off. And so it became a lot easier because it was, not easy in that sense, but like I was not projecting something that wasn't reality anymore. And B, it was much more enjoyable because I wasn't trying to force something I wasn't at that time because I was no longer that person anymore. And it just became fun and it resonated with so many people. And I think people were craving that at the time because again, authenticity online wasn't really a thing. So it blew up. Blew up every night, since 2019, but it started to gain traction of like people like, oh my gosh, thank you for showing up like this because that's my dog pees all over my carpet too, like that, yes. That type of thing. And so it was super rewarding. And that gave me like a whole nother fire because I was like, wait a second, like we're all the same in this. And if I can show up and be like someone's friend, essentially, like, especially through 2020, because now we're talking like we went right into 2020 and people, didn't have the social connection that they used to. So a lot of people were going online for that. And I just showed up as like someone they knew, another mom that they knew that felt like them. And I think it felt very like comforting for people like, oh, she's not perfect. Everyone else online, it looks perfect, but I know she's not perfect. So I feel a little better about myself that I'm normal and she's normal and it's all good. So that was a shifting point in my career. Wow. Absolutely shifting point in my career. And it became so much more rewarding, so much more fun. And it did gain a lot of traction that way.
And you said that was 2019. Right?
Yes. So not like Labor Day weekend.
Oh my God. Like, I remember. It's a big deal. I kid you not. I had like extensions to my hips, hair extensions to my hips. And I took them out. I remember it like it was yesterday. I took them out. I cut all my hair off. I was like, I can't keep up with this hair, these eyelashes. I cannot. And I like I'm so silly, but it was like very symbolic. I like took out all the hair and I just like showed up as like who I was. And it was
it was the best choice of my whole, like to think I almost gave it up. I did. That would have been the moment I gave it up. And so I'm so glad I didn't, because it's so cool to see where it is now.
I love it. It's so interesting. I feel like a theme of this podcast with a lot of women similar to you that I interview, whenever they have a baby, whether it's their first or second, there's always some inflection point in their life. Like either they'll start a new business, or for you, it kind of broke this old mold that you had and took you to a place that you couldn't even imagine. You mentioned it was like a big inflection point for you and your brand, and felt more authentic. So it's just so cool to see the blessings that come around when, you know, there's like a baby involved. It's just an interesting theme that I've noticed.
And I waited so long to have kids because working was so important to me, and I get so much value out of being able to work, and I still do to this day. And I have 3 kids, but I was so unsure, as like we waited a long time, 7 years to have kids. And when we did, I kind of was like, my life might be over. And then we did. And like I told you, like it kind of felt like it was like, oh shoot, I've felt this for so long. And I was right. It is over. And like I was telling someone at lunch the other day, and I was like, literally the biggest moments of my career have been since I had kids, which is so cool, because telling me that back then, I would have never believed it. And it didn't feel like it at first, but absolutely the biggest moments of almost every big moment of my career has been since I became a mom, which is so cool.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
And
I wish I would have known
similar
that.
to you, I didn't know that until I started this podcast, and that, you know, I don't have any kids yet, but I'm so career oriented. I love what I do. Like it's my first baby, you know? So meeting people like you, I'm like, there's a way to do both. I didn't know that existed because I didn't have people in my world who I looked up to. That's changed over the years now, but I love hearing that, you know, you mentioned your life just continued to progress in the best ways, even business wise, after having kids, which is just so fun to hear.
I feel like that's wild and not a narrative that everybody talks about. So you feel like, you know, it's going to end for you, or you're going to have to really slow down, which I slow down in the ways I want to slow down for sure, because there are ways that I want to be available and present, but it's been so rewarding, and literally it was the catapult of my career, which is so cool.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love it. So, I mean, so just going back to that time, you know, it's 2020, 2021, you're doing great. You're in your element, you know, your social media is growing and building and increasing, and you still had this itch to do something different, even though like everything, you're busy already. You have like a kid, and your Instagram's doing wonderfully. So tell me more about the impetus of Nuuds. Like, what was it about clothing? And did you have other business ideas that you were tinkering with at that time as well?
Yeah, I think I still do. I think it's so funny to look back and be like, oh, I don't want to, I was the person who said, I'm not going to own my own business, knowing my dad did.
Yeah,
because
you're right.
I always have an idea. Yeah. So, yes, there were multiple. So what happened was, I love what I do. Like my very first love, my passion is my personal brand. I love that. I still to this day love it. I feel like it's so rewarding for me to get to show up and, you know, be a friend to all of these women that are part of a community that I built online. It's ironic and crazy and cool to me, and I love it so much. And so Nuuds was like my little brainchild out of that. To this day, that's still my passion. Nuuds is a little like passion project, I would say, because these women, I say we because I am them. So I feel like we are all in a not all, but a lot of us are in a very similar stage of life, or we can at least relate on the fact that, like, you know, we don't always feel great in clothes we put on. So what I was selling clothes online by just trying to help people of like, oh, I found this. It feels good on me. I like it, whatever. I would show up and be like, you know, I found this. I love it. It's great. And people would buy it. And I would think, my husband and I kind of got this itch after COVID. Like, I know I want to do something else. Like, not that I was bored. That's not the best word for it at all. I wasn't bored. I love what I do. It was more like I could do something else. Yeah. I want like a challenge. Like I could do, let's try to do something new that we've never done. So I had a few different business ideas that were in that season. And I just started like talking to people that I had, you know how earlier I was saying, like, I've just tried to show up and do like the best job I can, no matter where it is. So that's awarded me like amazing relationships, because I've tried to like serve every person that I've worked for really well. And so I think that in that, I knew clothes was like a pain point of all the women in the community that followed me, every single one of them. I talked about clothes often because I was always trying to find things that they could feel good in, that would fit well for them, that fit well for me. And in my family specifically, I have a bunch of sisters. There's 5 of us, including my mom. And so we're all different shapes and sizes. And so it was always like, well, what works for Daryl-Ann doesn't work for Danielle. And like what works for her doesn't work for her. And so I was like, you know what? I can do a good job with this. Like I can do a good job with this. So I started asking some of the business relationships I had, like, do you know anyone, this is how I worded it, because I literally knew nothing about making clothes going back to like having no experience. I said, do you know anyone that can make clothes? To one of the companies I worked with that did hair products. And he's like, well, actually, a girl I went to college with, her and her husband consult and, make clothing. And I was like, okay, like, could I talk to them, And he's like, sure, I'll connect you, whatever. It's so casual. And today that husband and wife are head of design and head of production.
Amazing.
And so it is wild because we started out as like a contractor with them. And I was like, could we make a t-shirt? Like, that's the thing I know. I'm a jeans and a t-shirt. Like I know all these women that follow me are moms. We don't have time to put together these cute, gorgeous outfits I wish I could wear and I used to wear. Like I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
I just want something I can put on that I look put together. I feel good about myself. I feel really confident in, and I can do whatever my day has. I can take care of my kids. I can go show up at the store and I don't look like disheveled. I just look cute. I feel confident, most importantly, and it'll fit every body type that it can. And so that was my mission, was to create a perfect t-shirt that made you feel confident and made me feel put together and was easy to style and, and wasn't $200.
Sure.
But was great quality. And you didn't have to replace every month or whatever. And so we set out to do that. And as we were doing it, I was like, I was postpartum. I was like, could we make cooling pajamas? Because I am sweating through everything. And so they were like, yeah, we could do pajamas. And I was like, well, bodysuits were huge. And I was like, they make me feel terrible about myself.
Same.
They show everything. And I was like, I'm going to make one that makes us feel good. Let's try it. So like we launched with 7 products, and it was a t-shirt, bodysuits, pajamas, a couple men's t-shirts, a sweatshirt, and like just the things I live in every day. And we sought to make attainable basics that make everyone feel confident. And that's what we're still doing, is making attainable basics that make everyone feel confident. And it is so much fun. And I love it so much. So rewarding.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how you said you just started asking people. Like you didn't have a business plan. You're like, oh, let me just tinker with this idea that I have, put myself out there. I feel like sometimes people feel afraid to ask these quote unquote silly questions. Like they don't know how to phrase manufacture. It's like, well, who can work with me to create a t-shirt? Like even like you have no problem showing up as yourself, which I love, and asking questions. And it's so cool to see that you're still working with the people that you connected with so early on. And I believe, if I read this correctly, like when you guys launched, you sold out in 7 minutes, which is
7
incredible.
minutes. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure it's a huge part as a community who follows you, and you've really sat with your community to see, what do people want? What are people gravitating to? What do you want? So it's just amazing to hear that. And, were there any, I'm sure there's been so many challenges that we can dig into, but in those very early days, whether it was selling out in 7 minutes or creating the products, like what were some of the most challenging aspects of like the early days of launching Nuuds?
Yeah, I think that, like, to your point, and to encourage anybody, like me not knowing, looking back, me having no experience in clothing manufacturing, in how it's done per se. Like if you quote that, oh, that's not how it's done. Like that, I had no idea how it was done. I'd never been involved in clothing manufacturing at all. And so they would say things to me like, oh, well, that's not how it's done. And, some things I'd heed advice on, but some things I feel like served me so well because I wasn't ingrained in how it's normally done.
I love that.
And so I think that is a huge factor as to what has made Nuuds successful, is because I didn't know how it was done. And so I just did it the way that made sense, or the way that I would have wanted it. And that is why it has resonated with so many people, because that's how they want it also. So for example, we don't use fit models per se normally, especially in the beginning. Now we use them for balance and things like that, which is different, but every item is still fit on me, every single item we make. And so that is where all fit adjustments are made. So like we're not fitting, because they're like, oh, well, in the beginning they would tell me, we need a fit model because what we do is we fit it on a perfect size medium and then blah, blah, blah. And they have heard this, to their defense. They have lived and breathed clothing manufacturing for years. And that's why, they're experts in it. And I love that about them. But I was listening with open ears that were totally raw and uneducated. And I was like, do you hear what you're saying? A perfect size medium. No one is a perfect size medium. That is why clothes don't fit. And so I was like, let's fit it on real girls, like real women, real body types. So today, real bodies is we say it all the time because that's what I kept saying. I'm like, I want to use real bodies, not fit models. And so nothing against a fit model. They're super valuable, but it was just like when I'm fitting things, I want to fit them on real bodies. That is why it's not translating, because women don't have perfect size anything. Like no one is a perfect size anything. And so I think that served us really well. And so like doing it with no education and being like, well, I should really learn XYZ first. If I had done that, I don't think we would have found this niche that we found. And just by doing it with no experience was actually the biggest reward for us, because I was just using common sense as to why I stepped into this in the first place. And it led us to where we are and to a market that no one's doing it that way. And that is why it's been successful. So like, I don't know if that answered your question, but it's such a huge part of our story.
Yeah. And I have goosebumps because I'm so passionate about that. Like, I think just to underscore what you said, like coming from having an outside perspective, when you're not educated, you don't know the industry well, it could be your biggest gift. And so many people don't start or get into an industry because they're intimidated. So I appreciate that you partner with the right people, listen to your intuition, really push for what you wanted and ask questions that people in the industry didn't. And you use logic. So that's really incredible and hopefully encouraging for anyone listening in. And so also what I find so interesting is that you and your husband, I mean, you guys have self-funded this. I believe I was listening to another interview and you guys have really taken calculated risks and put so much of your savings into this business. And I'm just curious, was that, especially with young kids, was that difficult to do at the time? Did it feel very risky? Like what was really going through both your guys' mind when you wanted to double down on this business, this first business that you guys have really done together in clothing?
Yeah, I think to the point, it started out as like a little passion project of like, I'm going to make a great t-shirt that fits everyone and makes people feel good. That was the start of it. And so it didn't seem to be this big investment at first. Sure. And then I was like, well, what about? And so then slowly as I was comparing like, okay, well, how much should we buy? Because I did have some reference point. Thankfully, that was like a gift that I had some reference point of, I had in some sense sold product for people for years. Yeah. And so I had some reference point of like how much to sell, but I think at the core of what it is, so that's how we ordered. I'm always a little bit risky. Our team will tell you that, like I'm willing to take risks. Yeah. So I'm always a little bit risky. And I think what served me well too is I don't know how to say this correctly, but I am not like, I'm confident that I can make money again. So I think that like
to have that.
Yeah. I think that once you have proven to yourself that you can do it, and I've heard other people talk about this before too. It's like, well, I could do it again and I could do it again. So I think that helps in the risk taking of like, yes, it's risky, but I'm always willing to bet on myself, if that makes sense. So I'm like, well, if I'm going to bet on something, like I'll bet on myself. And so we took money and invested it ourselves because the main reason of that is we did have people interested that wanted to like be a part of it. I did not want anyone telling me how to do anything.
I'm the same way.
So I didn't want opinions because the way that I was doing things, again, was not like how it was typically done. The way things are typically priced, I learned in clothes is you say, oh, I want to sell it for $48. And then you work backwards and pick fabrics off of that. And I was like, no. Give me like all the fabrics. I'll pick it and then I'll price it when I'm done, when it's exactly the way I want it. And so I didn't cut any corners because there was no objective price to get to. So I just made the product, and we still do it this way, exactly how I want to, and then it's priced after. Yeah, I think that is how we did it. That is how we made in the best t-shirt, because I wasn't worried about making the best t-shirt for $48. I was worried about just making the best t-shirt, and then I figured it out after. And so I think with investors and things like that, I was concerned that they would want a certain like profit margin or whatever, and I didn't want to be held to that. So we did it ourselves. And it ended up, like I said, growing and being a bigger investment than we ever anticipated it was going to be. And my husband always describes it as at some point he was like, well, this has to work now. Like we are really leveraged into this. So it was risky. I want to say, it was risky to the point that like it had to work. Like we bet on it so much that it had to work. And it did. Like day one, it worked. And it was like, whoa, this is within 7 minutes we had ordered, I want to say 100,000 units of product, and we sold half of it in the first 7 minutes.
Wow.
And so that was wild. It was to my point of having sold stuff before, it was way more than I ever anticipated. So we thought that was going to last us. Cause when you manufacture stuff, it's not instantaneous.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it takes time. Yeah. And so I didn't know that at first. Still to this day, our team is like, we'll go to factories which is so cool. Some of our factory relationships now are awesome, but they're like, well, it's not typically, I hear it all the time. This is not how it's typically done. I'm like, and I've learned to trust my gut and be like, that's a good thing. When you hit that point of like, this isn't how it's typically done, that's why you're there. Like that is literally why I'm there. So, I think that hearing that it's now, in the beginning, it like anybody, I'm sure, it made me feel a little insecure. Today, I've realized that those moments are what make nuuds different and successful. It is those moments of like, we're not corporate. This isn't how it's done. And that is exactly why we're here, And so I think that learning to let that encourage me rather than scare me has been really rewarding and really cool.
Yeah, I love that. And one thing, I love that what you also said early on where you were like, I knew that I could start again and make money again. And I think, in the beginning of the podcast, we were talking about all the benefits of having different jobs and experiences. Like it just shows you've built that confidence with hard work in whatever job you've had over time where you're like, okay, if this doesn't work, I'll figure it out. I'm able to make money again. I'm able to start again because you've put yourself in so many different positions where you've gained that confidence, which I think is so beautiful. And it's also a benefit of starting a business a little bit later in your life after different experiences. Because sometimes I remember, at least for me, I was dying to start my own business so early, but I never had an idea. But similar to you, I worked at different jobs, did really well, finally had an idea, took the leap. But I'm so glad I had that experience because I built that confidence and savings,
totally.
which is
That's
so
such
nice.
a good point.
You have a savings, you have some people, of course, everyone's situation is different, but it's nice to be able to self-fund if you can, if you've been smart around, your financial situation. Yeah.
Yeah. So true. That is so true. Yeah. My brother right now, it's really cool to see because he's worked with us on nuuds since day one and he's our COO and he's amazing. And he's total entrepreneur too. Which entrepreneurs who work for other people and they're hard workers are the best employees because they own it. Like that's all they can help. Like I can't help but act like I own something the minute I step into it, So they are the best, in my opinion. People who want to be an entrepreneur, if they say that to me in an interview, I'm like, okay, I like that about you. Like that just means you're going to own it and run with it and you have that in you. And it's like a grit that is really awesome. And so my brother has shown up like that. And to your point, needed cash to have and an idea, but didn't have one yet. And I really think there is something to be said for working really hard and like owning it and giving it your all to someone else. Cause I did that with my dad's construction company. My husband did it too. And I always talk about how much I learned in doing that for 10 years. It's like when you build somebody else's dream, like how to build your own and you've learned so much along the way,
Yeah. And you have like a consistent paycheck. Like how nice is that? Like you work, like you're in it and you're supporting, and you're seeing everything, but you don't really have that risk as much as like, exactly. So it's a really good place to be. That's super exciting for your brother. And I wanted to ask, I know we're coming up on time, but your family is very much infused in the business and in a lot of your work. So can you kind of touch upon that and how you guys all work together?
Yeah. Okay. So my husband and I obviously own nuuds. And we're the only sole owners, which is still cool because I can still do things the way I want to do them without anyone's opinion. But no, my brother is our COO, and that is really the only family that works for nuuds. So, which is cool. My family is very, like, we all support each other. And it's been really awesome. And really, I've learned unique that not all families obviously are like that. And so I feel really blessed and fortunate that it is like that. But my brother does work for us. He has like helped build this dream since literally day one before it was a thing. And so now, like with him starting something, we're all so passionate
is he
about it.
starting something now?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. But like he'll start something and then we all jump on board. So that's like, it's a very special dynamic that I don't take for granted. Of like, my sister is always like, we just launched swimwear today.
Congratulations.
And yesterday, thank you. I'm so excited about it. It was incredible. But my sister and I, like, she's always like, well, I'll try it on with you. And we like do it together. And so that's just my family dynamic. And I feel really fortunate. But to answer your question about who works for Nuuds, everyone's been there since day one to show up for it. But my brother works for Nuuds. So that's really cool.
I love it.
It is fun to work together.
Yeah. And I mean, you guys have so much support. Like you said, your sister is supporting you and I'm sure they try everything. I'm sure they take your clothes. Yeah. I'd love it. I'd be like,
they fit it. Yeah. They fit it all. Like, so we fit it on multiple people and luckily we're all different sizes. So, I get to fit it on them. I fit it on me. And so it's really fun. And it gives it a really good well-roundedness because we're fitting it on all different body types and all different people. And so I get a lot of opinions and it makes it better.
Yes. Amazing. Well, I'll end on one last question. What do you think has been the biggest lesson you've learned personally or professionally, or actually let's do both if you have something personally and professionally since you started Nuuds?
That's a great question. I think professionally, I'm still learning this, but one thing that's at the top of my mind right now is really your best asset is how much you believe in the product and not downplaying it at all. And so I think that a lot of times I felt like it's respectful to like sidestep it, like kind of what we were talking about earlier, like, oh, it's respectful to not be too bullish, to not, but being bullish about the thing, about your purpose is not rude. And that is not, it's almost when you're not like, this is why we're here and this is why we're the best. People won't, if you don't believe it, nobody else is going to believe it. And so I've learned that like, you know, talking positive and talking like Nuuds is the best basics clothing company. I believe that.
Yeah.
And I'm not like apologetic about it. I don't feel sorry about it. Of course it is. Like, that's what I made it to be. And like, if I don't believe that, how in the world is anyone else going to believe it? And so I think like really believing that and like saying it and becoming confident in your mission and what you do and why you're there. If you can be confident in it, other people will be confident in it. And if you're not 100% confident in it and why you're showing up, in your why, you don't have to be confident in how, but in your why, if you're confident in your why, then other people will be confident in it too. Like other people will believe it. But if you don't believe it yourself first, I think that has been a really big thing that I've learned in like professional. Mm-hmm. And then personal, I think believing the lie of like we were talking about earlier, I feel like the more I have on my plate, like the more I've become a mom, like now I just had my third baby, like she's 9 months old. It doesn't have to look a certain way. And it doesn't mean that like you have to give up to grow in your personal life. Like I always thought like, as I grow in my personal life, as I become a mom, I will lose like my career, or I won't be able to advance as much in my career. And I feel like that's a lie that a lot of people are told. But the reality is, even if you look at like some of the most successful women I look at, they're like have 4 children. Like, so I think that it doesn't have to look a certain way. Like you don't have to be a stay-at-home mom to be a good mom. You don't have to have a nanny and never be around if you're a working mom. I think like getting rid of those lies has been big for me, and watching it just be what it is and not taking so much input from like the internet and the outside, and just like knowing that, you know, I can have help from an amazing nanny who loves my kids, and I get to be fulfilled in work, and I get to show up as a better mom to them because I'm so fulfilled. Like their best mom is a fulfilled mom. And so, and then I don't have, and there is a part of me that wants to be there. So I do stop at work, but to be honest, the ways I have let go and work, have required, in order to be there as a mom, have required me to hire people that are better at things than I am. So it's actually built my business, and I get to show up as a mom. It's very unique, and it's pushed me even further in both areas. And so like, I really think that believing like becoming a mom has made me a way better business person. And so, which is so cool. And so that wasn't a lie. It was a total lie that I believed before it. And so anyways,
Oh my God.
those would probably be my two.
So beautiful, Daryl-Ann. I'm like tearing up. I'm like, that's so profound, so inspiring. Something that I love to always hear all the time. I'm like, I'm going to rewind and listen to that again because it's
Totally.
so true. You think it needs to be a certain way. And it's just really inspiring to see someone who's living it with kids, still growing the business. You always think you need to slow down, but it's like, there's different ways to create your life, and you got to do what works for you at the end of the day, right? Not what other people think. So it's really amazing that you've created that and you're sharing that with people, because I think it's so important. But this was so fun. I feel like I could have talked to you for hours. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Yasmin. This was so fun. And I hope it inspires somebody to start something, because like your non-expertise is literally what could be what is needed in that market. And I feel like knowing that now, I'm like, wow, thank God I did it. And so thank you so much for talking to me. I loved it so much.